Yeah, you know, since I'm in music school, and I'm pretty sure Jack can relate to this at all, as well, since we've switched to online learning, and in terms of music online, it's a completely different experience that we need to adapt to, because it's especially difficult during these times. If you need to practice, like, there's nowhere else to practice except your home, or having lessons online is a completely different experience, because you don't have that chance to interact. You're just looking at somebody through a screen, and it's a completely different experience. And for me personally, since I have a goal of becoming a choral conductor, I feel like it's important for me to learn, because um, I went to my former choir, BC Girls Choir, and they're not exactly learning online, but it's a totally different experience of what they've been doing for the past few years. Like, everybody is distance, everybody's wearing a mask, and it's definitely a bit harder to sing through a mask. That's why there are masks specifically being made for singers. And for me, I feel like it's definitely an asset to learn, okay, like, in the event, God forbid, that something like this doesn't happen again, like, what can I do to adapt to these changes? What can we do so that nothing drastic changes? We can still make this a fun experience for whoever is in the choir.
Yeah, for sure. Keely, do you want to speak?
Yeah, totally. Um, Adaptability has always been super important, especially in this industry, especially with changing technology. Like Nav, I come from a communications background, so that's always kind of at the forefront of my perspectives, and especially thinking about media and your social media. And just from the perspective of a music marketing professional, I think that a lot of artists love to make music and don't love to, do the work that comes with promoting that music because they don't necessarily know how to best reach an audience and it's not something that they're passionate about. So it's just such an important factor of reaching people online these days. Without something like an EPK, it's so hard to get promoters to notice you, to book live gigs. It's hard to get playlist ads on Spotify. It's just so much harder to do everything today without a good social media presence, without a good media kit. And that's one of the things that we've had to adapt to in these last few years, because especially in the early 2000s and prior Spotify streaming, all of that, none of that was a thing. It was so much easier to just convince people to buy your music. And no one's really buying music anymore because of streaming. And that's really taken a huge dent out of an artist's paycheck, among other things. Um, yeah, and we know that these streaming giants definitely don't pay as well as you'd hope that they would. I think most of us can relate on that matter, but um, we have to adapt and we have to find new ways to make sure that in this changing industry that we're able to change with the industry to go with the flow and to make sure that we're still thriving and we're still able to, find our success and find our footing and keep our heads above water, because it's definitely hard to make it in music. And I know that anyone here and probably people that are watching know how hard you have to work to do it.
Jack, do we want to hear from you?
Yeah, well, to begin this one, I'd actually like to share a quote from a man whose first name I share, the author Jack Kerouac. And the quote is, "I have nothing to offer but my own confusion." And that's very much how I feel in this day and age as a musician with COVID-19. It, as a musician, you're always combating self-doubt, societal pressures, uh, stigmas, and just trying to stay afloat. Um, and this adds a new level to that experience. That said, I think it would be naive to say there are only bad things coming from this. During quarantine periods, I'm a classical musician and a jazz musician and popular musician, but mainly classical. I've noticed young people, through having the opportunity to explore various live stream platforms and just spend more time listening to music, exploring their own desires and their likes and dislikes, have become more interested in classical music than I've ever seen. I see more people concerned about fine art, wondering how fine art institutions and fine artists will stay active, funded, engaged. And these were all legitimate concerns 10 years ago, 20 years ago, last year, but they finally seem to be in people's minds. I think that's a good thing. I like that awareness. Also, from a personal standpoint, I found this opportunity has provided excellent fodder for creativity projects. I find myself documenting my creative process a lot more. I'm recording a lot more. I'm analyzing my own work, and I feel that I'm achieving new heights of excellence due to having the time to refine, reduce, recycle my thoughts, and everything is becoming more concise, more clear, and also taking the time to sit back and observe the world around us, because that is what art is created on. But as artists, so often we're just desperately trying to get to the next gig and figure out our next project, and just get through the week, still managing to get some sleep. But to actually be able to take the time to step back and observe and reflect, that is when the best art occurs.
Yeah, for sure. I really like what you said there. Navreet?
Yeah, I just to build off Keely and Jack's answers here. So a part of COVID-19 and just the whole concept of adapting in total, it's about finding ways to streamline your processes. And now we have time to look back on the work that we did and just see what we did wrong, and find ways to combat that, or find ways to even shift your entire perspective on how you come about approaching certain things. So me and Keely, our Face the Music Entertainment, was actually supposed to be a live promotions company. We had a series of shows and music networking events planned out for the summer, and we were ready to roll those out. We're actually ready to start promoting them as soon as COVID-19 hit. But unfortunately, we've had to take a big step back and sort of revisit the idea of live shows. And as months, it became more apparent to us that COVID-19 is probably going to be something that we're going to have to deal with for the next 2 to 3 years. And we just wrote live shows off, like it's just not something we did. But then we looked into concepts like live streaming, utilizing technology, because as Keely said, technology was at our forefront. We're a music marketing company. We look to social media and find ways we can adapt to said music or music practices online. So we looked at live streaming and just found that through market research that people had seen success in live streams, but it wasn't the right market for us to enter in, particularly just because we felt like we weren't getting our message across. We had wanted to help musicians and help them build our platforms, and we felt like live streaming wasn't the opportunity for us. It's worked great for others, but that's when we started to speak on our building our platforms, helping musicians build their platforms in a time like this, taking the time, because it's integral for musicians to be utilizing this time, like Jack says, to build whatever presence, to get their music out online, build their name. So when live shows do come about again next, hopefully 2 to 3 years, is that they have audiences waiting for them. And again, just the whole concept, even live shows, that's something that we'll have to address within the next 2 to 3 years if they are like what they used to be. And these are questions, unfortunately, in our industry, because we've been hit the hardest by COVID-19. And any sort of major world event, I feel like the arts have always had just a hard time in general trying to adapt and trying to find new processes and ways to make this work. But yeah, it's something now, like like I said, now is the time to just sort of reflect and see what you could do for the future and find ways to solve problems now so you don't come about them in the future, or find ways to make this pandemic work for you.
Yeah, those are all some really great points that you've made. And I definitely agree with the whole idea of having to kind of find a way to exist online, not just with the pandemic, but just in the future of music in general. We see more and more of this, online presence being the thing that we care about the most. There's a lot of artists getting famous, like getting recognition for their music because of things like TikTok. Their song goes viral and then they gain a following from it. And I think a lot of people now are either trying to make music that they specifically can market on TikTok because it is such an easy way to kind of go viral. That we see some artists like, not necessarily putting out music that they're super like passionate about, and more about what's easy to market online, which I think is interesting. As well as, just trying to find those ways to market yourself and your music is just interesting with the changing social media and everything like that. These platforms pop up super fast. TikTok was not of this size a year ago, and now it's a huge thing that's dominating that's dominating our feeds and the music industry. So I just think that, constantly trying to stay on top of these new platforms, new ways of promoting ourselves is super interesting, and is something that, we've had to adapt to because of COVID and just because of the way that things are anyways. I agree that it is definitely a time to reflect and take time to make your own music. I released and made my first like official song in quarantine this year because I finally had the time to do so, and had that inspiration to kind of get started. And I just think it's yeah, I agree with you all on how it's a time to adapt and learn to adapt and just kind of reflect on yourself. Our next question is, within your line of work, what has been your experience in the Vancouver music scene, and how do you find it compares to the rest of Canada? Yvonne, do you want to start?
So for me, I'm mostly in the choir scene. Like all my life, it's just been choir, because I've been in the same choir for 11 years now. I've been touring everywhere, and I haven't really been to the rest of Canada. I've been to Ontario, but mostly it's a bit different because I was in an all-girls choir, and there's not very many, all-girls organizations anymore. Mostly, it's mostly just co-ed and everything, but it's actually pretty interesting because, it's harder to find boys that like to sing. It's harder to find, boys who want to come and sing in a choir, and it's also hard to find the balance because, their voices change and everything. So it's hard to find that fit. And I feel like in my experience, I didn't really see very many choirs in, just BC in general, or, I see like one choir in one known choir in every province, sort of. And it's unfortunate because, I feel like being in a choir, you bring people together to sing together. And I feel like that you're able to create new bonds with other people, because you share the same passion, that you love to sing. And it's one of the things that I think being in a choir affects me the most, because of the relationships that I've created with other people. And it's also shaped my identity in, becoming a singer, and also being able to adapt because I have a disability. I was able to overcome the obstacles and be at the level of someone who doesn't have a disability. So I feel like that would be in terms of that. In Canada, mostly, music, all the famous music, it's always like US, America, everything. It's like most of the music we listen, it's like most of the music that appears on the radio, even on Canadian radio, we hear American music. And it's important for us to be able to get whoever's inspired of songwriting, being able to write their own songs, being able to promote that, and being able to get the exposure, as much exposure as American artists get. Like Jessana said, like TikTok is one of the biggest platforms that everybody uses, and it's how most celebrities nowadays are known, because they make TikToks constantly.
Keely, do you want to speak on this?
Totally. Yeah, I have a few thoughts. I wedged my foot in the door of the Vancouver music scene, I'd say around 5 years ago now. And I've been like steadily with my band, we've been working our way up and we've been playing the venues in Vancouver. But the thing about the venues in Vancouver is that there's very few of them. Oftentimes, many of them are in trouble financially because of the price of rent. Just a few months ago, or I want to say it was a few months ago, but it was about 8 months ago now, because time just has gone completely differently this year for everybody. But Redgate Art Society was struggling with the rent increase because of the taxes on the property, despite the fact that they only took up a portion of that property. And that's been a great independent venue, especially for young people, because they made it work so that it could be all ages, so that younger people could get into shows in Vancouver. And I'm sure, as many of you know, all ages gigs are really hard to come by. So as somebody who started out in the scene underage, I remember playing the Roxy and then only being able to come in the doors 15 minutes before my set and having to leave 15 minutes after because I was 18 and I couldn't be in the building because they served alcohol and it was a bar and stuff like that. So there's stuff like that. There's stuff like the monopolies that certain companies hold over venues for promoters, I guess. So if you want to book a venue, most often you have to go through a certain company to do so because there's so few venues and so many people that want to play them. And on that note, I guess once you've played 1 or 2 venues in Vancouver, you've pretty much played all the ones that people actually frequent. So it's really hard because even if you want to start a new independent venue and if you want people to come out and play that venue, there's very little money in that for both artists and for promoters and for people who own the venue, unless you charge an absurd fee for renting the venue, and then nobody wins and no one makes money, and it's all because of the property tax and all because of the rent in Vancouver and how crazy expensive it is to live in this city. So it makes it incredibly hard for artists to flourish, and it makes it incredibly hard for us to find places to play, especially when a lot of places don't want to pay musicians what they deserve, which is such a huge thing to Nav and I and our company. It's why we wanted to go into live promotions to begin with. It's because we saw the gap in the payment for live musicians and how little you'd get offer. As a musician myself, I remember walking into venues and them saying, "Hey, we'll pay you $50 to play this 3-hour set," and me being like, "No." And then, "No, my time's not worth that." But yeah, the only way you can really make money, and albeit it's not great either, is playing covers. And Vancouver also tends to have a pay to play policy, which I also cannot stand. But I'm going to let somebody else speak because I could probably go on about this for much longer than you'd like to hear.
Jack, do you want to talk about your experience?
Yes, thank you. This might be a little bit long, so bear with me. As far as I can see, there are 3 things we're discussing here. Canadian artistic identity, being an artist in Canada, and being an artist in Vancouver, British Columbia. I think I'll tackle them individually. It's very interesting for me to hear the other 2 artists who have gone before me here speak, because you both come from entirely different areas of musical pursuit than me. And it's really, really interesting to hear about your experience. 1, because it sounds kind of dreadful. 2, because it's almost the exact opposite of what I have experienced. As an artist in Vancouver, I have found it to be a community unlike any other. The wealth of talent, the wealth of inspiration, the atmosphere amongst artists from all different walks of artistic life. And personally, it doesn't sound like this has been everyone's experience, but I've also found the immense wealth of opportunity incredible. And I've also found that when I feel there isn't an opportunity there isn't the precise opportunity that I am seeking, if I try hard enough, I can make it happen. And I'm really, really grateful to that, because I know people from artistic communities around the world, and they don't say that is the case other places. And I'm very thankful to that. And I love this city dearly for many reasons, including that. I also feel like it's worth noting that due to the political and social programs we have located it within this province, that there are really, really wonderful things for an artist to benefit on. We have the marvelous BC Arts Council. We have all sorts of incredible grants offered by the government. And we're lucky enough to live in this socialist province where things like our healthcare are provided and artists can not struggle. They do in places like the US. Now, that said, I do realize my experience is singular from others, and that could be from my line of work. As a Canadian artist in Canada, I really, really get quite upset when people talk about how, oh my gosh, it's the US and none of the big people are Canadian and they don't give us a chance. If you look at the history of popular music and current popular music, some of the biggest artists are from Canada. Drake is from Canada. He's one of the biggest artists in the world. Neil Young is from Canada. In his heyday, he was one of the best-selling rock and roll artists, and he's one of the greatest guitar players of all time. Joni Mitchell, her album was just voted the 5th best album of all time by Rolling Stone. It's from Canada. We can't let stereotypes and bitterness not allow us to see what gigantic shoulders we're standing on. And if we cannot let ourselves become uninspired. And one thing I hear a lot is that Canada does not have an artistic identity. That is absolutely false. Our artistic identity is as diverse as Canada is, thank God. And it has as many opportunities as Canada offers, thank God. Finally, in terms of Canadian artistic identity itself, it's one of inclusivity. It's one of having to work really, really hard, knowing that outcomes are achievable if you just persevere and push forward as much as you possibly can. It's one of being open and receptive to whatever comes your way. And it's one of community and collaboration. Thanks.
Navreet, do you want to give us your thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. So thank you, Jack, on sharing your perspective about your successes within Vancouver and as a Canadian artist. Yeah, my experience, so I don't know if I mentioned, but I had intentions of being an artist out here, and that was my primary goal. I wanted to go to music school and actually pursue a career in professional music. And unfortunately, I experienced what Keely had to experience within the music scene, having to play those same venues or not getting paid what I deserve for my time. And ultimately just sort of led me down a road of frustration where I found that, okay, professional music probably isn't the most viable career for me. And that's no disrespect to anyone else, but for me, it was just, it didn't work out for me because I found myself starting to hate music because of what I was starting to experience in Vancouver. So I decided to pursue a career in communications and integrated my love for technology and media into my love of music and started approaching music from the business standpoint, from a viewer standpoint. Every show I've ever been to, I sort of have like an internal dialogue going in my head. Okay, how is this venue shaped? How is how's the user experience, and how is my experience? And I always ask artists about their experience and their music scene. And more times than once, they often say that they're tired of playing the same venue, or they feel like they have hit this glass ceiling for Vancouver. They've done everything that they possibly can. And now it's time for them to move to Toronto or Montreal in hopes of more opportunity, because genuinely they're just tired of playing the same 4 venues and getting the same pay every weekend and playing the same songs. And unfortunately, my friends will hit that glass ceiling and go elsewhere. Often Montreal, that's where the highest paying gigs in Canada are right now, and that's where most of the opportunity is before COVID, I should mention. But oftentimes I also go to Nashville or New York in hopes of getting artist development deals through record labels, and they found a huge success out there. To be quite honest, they've managed to get signed with record labels and find opportunity, and they've made a name for themselves out there, which is amazing. But yeah, it's just this idea of like the glass ceiling and having to relocate your entire life to do what you do. And I think that's quite unfortunate. And that's the one thing I want to change as someone who is working on the business side of music, and sort of like making sure that artists feel at home and they feel proud of what they're doing, and trying to create more opportunities so they aren't feeling a lack or the need to bury themselves in more debt by going somewhere else and getting these opportunities. And that's been my experience within the Vancouver.
Yeah, thank you all for your thoughts and your experiences. It's really interesting to hear all of the different, the different types of experiences that everyone's had. For myself, I have always been in music, but I haven't quite broken into the music scene yet in Vancouver as someone who just started kind of releasing their own stuff. But I did want to talk a little bit about how Jack mentioned that, the Canadian that we do have a Canadian identity as musicians, and I think that is true. But and how you've mentioned that, a lot of big artists are Canadian, but I think the issue is that a lot of the time once they leave Canada, they kind of, people forget that they're from Canada. A lot of people are like, wait, this person's Canadian? I had no idea. Because once you kind of go to the US, go elsewhere, a lot of musicians will leave that part of them behind because they want to make it big everywhere, not just in Canada. And I think that is an issue that I see a lot in music. And I think that is one of the big things about that. Do we want to move to the next question? Because the next question is, as musicians, do we feel it is our role to be political? And if so, how should we go about doing this? Yvonne, do you want to start us off?
Personally, I'm not very political myself, but in terms of that, it can be quite subjective. In order to find out, like, should we be doing this? Like, should we be doing this? But for example, the Black Lives Matter movement, I feel like as a Black woman myself, I feel like it's my job to be able to put my music through, to put my voice through, whether it be singing or verbally or not. I feel like it's my role to be able to stand up for these victims that have gone through immense pain, like immense, tragedy, everything that's been going on, whether it be around the world or not. Like, I feel like it would be my job to put my voice out there so that other people can understand different perspectives of where this entire thing is coming from, why this whole thing is happening. It's like who, what, when, where, why, all of that. And trying to integrate what the most important thing is understanding, understanding, and why, all these people go through the things that they go through. And I feel like as musicians ourselves, like we can be able to, you know, create something that, you know, expresses and gives support to all these people that are, you know, going through their hard times. And, you know, some people might not agree with it because, you know, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. Some people might not agree with the movement. Some people might have drastic different opinions. But I think the main thing is that to have some sort of understanding and respect.
Keely, do you want to give us your thoughts?
Yeah. So while Yvonne was talking, I was thinking about how important it is to have an individual perspective, kind of like she said, how important it is for us each to have our own choices made. And I get that it's really personal for some people whether or not they choose to share their politics and whether or not they choose to be political in a public sphere. But with that said, I want to share an example that just came to me, and that's of the Dixie Chicks. And back when they were kind of being totally cut out of country music because they were speaking, I think it was their lead singer that was speaking against George Bush, and because she disagreed with his politics and she disagreed with what he was doing at the time. And they got, or she got, like a death threat. She was getting threats from all these supporters just because she spoke her mind, just because she had an opinion. But, and then they were kind of blacklisted in country music for a long time after that. And they wrote the song Not Ready to Make Nice about that entire ordeal, and that was probably one of the last songs that I saw on the charts for them due to the blacklisting in the industry, because they had the audacity or whatever to have an opinion, to be political. But people are entitled to their opinions and they're entitled to whether or not they decide to share them. But I guess that's a case in which there was consequences for having an opinion, for sharing her opinion. And it's not like they've backed down since then. It's not like they've taken any of it back. They went on and changed their name to the Chicks after the Black Lives Matter movement and after seeing all of the negative connotations that that name could have. And they are still having a voice in politics. So for me, I feel like it's my responsibility to sort of stand up for what I believe in and to share my opinions, because at the end of the day, musicians are people too, and they're allowed to have political opinions, and you can't just tell somebody to shut up and sing and or to shut up and look pretty, and it's not their identity, it's not their job to be political, because we're all human beings and every human being has the right to have a political opinion. And the fact that as musicians or as you know, popular celebrities, they had such a forward facing public perspective, it doesn't discount the fact that they have the right to their own opinion. They have the right to be able to share those political beliefs if it's what they believe in, if it's what they want to stand up for. And I feel the same way about myself and how I should act about my own beliefs.
Yeah, for sure. Jack?
You know, I really don't have that much to say that hasn't already been said. I think that was I actually times when you guys were speaking where I actually found myself a bit emotional just because it's such a profound topic and one that isn't easy to face but is so necessary. Um, a couple of things that I personally think I could add in my in the spheres which I am a part of musically. I notice currently as these really stupidly delayed reactions to things like Black Lives Matter are occurring. I mean, my goodness, these are issues that should have been dealt with in music ages and ages and ages ago, and it's almost pathetic that it's taken until 2020 for them to be addressed. One thing I'm noticing is a lot of times the attitude is, oh, this is in the public mind right now, and this is the right thing to do, so we should do it. We should program a piece by a black composer. We should make sure we have female composers on our recitals. Things like that. And I really hope that the artistic industry as a whole can move from this is the right thing to do because of what's going on in the world right now, and to we must do this because of basic moral decency, because of combating systemic oppression and violence that will not be changed if it's, oh, we're going to look better if we do this. No, we want to be decent people. So change because you're a good person and make a permanent change.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Navreet?
Yeah, so I'm commending Jack on what he had to say in terms of like our industry is usually the one at fault, just like at creative industries in general. They're usually the ones who are lacking female representation in said films or female representation in said music. And then once this movement is happening, that's when the higher ups are scrambling to find voices just to make them fit within that time or until something else comes along. And then you never hear of it ever again, or you never hear of these changes again. So good on you recognizing that that it should not just be a PR move. It should be a change that should be embedded going forward into all of our systems. But as my stance on how I feel like music has a political role, or musicians may have a political role, I think to some extent we're all cultural commentators. Politics and our influences and biases have found our ways through our favorite albums of all time, and all the music that we listen to, our implications of our biases and beliefs are there. And I feel like it's something to remove. It's hard to remove our lived experiences, especially when we're creating art, because that's where art comes from. And I feel like there's not much more to say except for the fact that we just do it without it being aware that our biases and our opinions are making their way through our music, through lived experience. And because everyone has such diverse backgrounds here, I feel like everyone has a piece of music that they can resonate, or probably has created, where their lived experiences and their views and beliefs have sort of tangle their way into your art or your creation of some sort.
Yeah, 100%. I just kind of wanted to add on to what both Navreet and Keely were saying, and kind of talk about, how I think it's important that we do talk about these things, because the personal is political, and it always has been. You can't separate your values anymore from what your politics are, because it's embedded in them. And I think that in our music, our values are embedded in them as well. I know that half the music I create ends up being political because it has my own lived experience and my own thoughts on issues and things like that, just because that's the way that I live. As somebody who studies political science, I'm constantly learning, and I'm constantly forming new opinions, and then these opinions come out through the art that I make as well. And I know that it's the same for most artists nowadays, and always has been. Music has always been a place where you express the things that you're feeling, express your thoughts about things going on in the world. And I do think that it is important to talk about these things as well, especially with people with bigger platforms. I think it says a lot when, people have the privilege to not speak on things, specifically like really wealthy celebrities and everything, when they ignore these issues going on because they don't want to lose fans, they don't want to lose money from it. I think it says a lot about the privilege that they have. And I think that, this is one of the reasons that it is so important to talk about these things. And it is important to be political when it comes to music. And then, so our last question now is, what is some advice that you have for other youth in music or wanting to kind of break into the industry? Yvonne?
So I think this would be the most common phrase that would go around. It's like, do what you love and love what you do. Because I think what I see the most is that people who want to go into the music industry, or they want to pursue music, but they feel the pressure because of how our economy is now, they always worry about what's going to get you the, it's like, what's going to get you the most, what's going to get you more money, what's going to support you financially. And I feel like people are unable to pursue their passions because they're so worried about how they're going to be financially stable. Because I hear people saying, oh, music is not going to get you much money. Music doesn't have that much of a salary, annual salary. And they always think of higher pay stuff like a doctor, a lawyer, all that high pay stuff. And I think the issue with that is, I think the main thing is that if you don't do what you like to do, you're going to end up hating it. And because I've seen people quit their jobs because they hate it, but they only did it for the money because they had to stabilize themselves financially. And if you feel like you're not getting the support that you need, you can be your own support. Like, you can do what you want to do because you are your own person. So if you want to go make music, go make music. Go and learn how to make music. Do all that stuff that you want to do because you are your own person.
Yeah, you've made some great points. Keely?
I think going off of what Yvonne said, the pressure of the industry is definitely intense. And another thing that I recognize is a sense of imposter syndrome. A lot of people feel like they don't belong and they haven't worked as hard as others and that they're not as good as other people. I know I've definitely been there. I don't know how many of you can relate. But as for a piece of advice on how to get over the pressures and how to get over your own self-doubt, this is going to sound so cliche, but it's so true. Just practice. Practice, practice, practice. Practice your instrument, practice your vocal, practice whatever it is you need to do. Do it daily. Do it when you're doing other things too. Do it as a distraction from day-to-day life. Do it when it seems like it's almost unfathomable to do it. Like, I practice at 1 a.m. sometimes just because it happens to be when I get the motivation to do so. When I was growing up, I hated practicing. I loathed it because it always gave me this sense of frustration that I wasn't getting better whenever I'd mess something up, whenever I felt like I wasn't learning fast enough. So that it's definitely a mistake that I made that I want other people to never make, is just to be turned off from practicing because of how frustrating and discouraging it could be at some times. So I just wouldn't do it for a lot of times. But when I got older, I really recognized the importance of sitting down with your instrument and actually going over it, no matter how much it frustrated you, no matter how much you felt like you were losing faith in your own abilities, until you get that spark, because that sense of accomplishment you get once you finally get it is so awesome. And also, students, your teachers can tell if you haven't practiced. If you sit down at your piano like 10 minutes before your lesson and quickly go through the song, and then try and show up to your lesson and tell them that you've been practicing this whole time and that you've been practicing all week, they're not going to buy that. They can tell. So just practice instead of trying to fake that you have.
Jack, can we hear from you?
That was wonderful. Yeah, just those were both really big, important topics, had to be addressed, and I would just like to hamper in on 4 specific pinpoints of advice that have really helped me feel confident with my own artistic endeavors. The first is, no matter what kind of artist you are, whether or not you're a musician, and if you're a musician, whether you're a performer or a composer or a conductor or producer, if you're a painter, if you're an author, do not only learn things in your area of expertise. Learn history. If you are a musician, research contemporary visual art. If you are a composer, watch classic movies. If you are a philosopher, listen to music. All the arts are connected in ways that never cease to amaze me. And I think I probably spend more time reading history than I do practicing. And I spend a lot of time practicing. But that has helped me understand things in a context that I would never have even known was there. Same with going to art galleries. Same with going to concerts. It's all connected and it opens up new horizons. Next, really simple one. Listen to every single record you can get your hands on if you're a musician. Listen to music that you think you don't like. Listen to music that your parents like and you don't like because your parents like it. Listen to music that you find in your grandparents' closet. Listen to music that's number one on the radio and listen to music by people you've never heard. And it'll amaze you how that is. Elton John is a giant fan of obscure classical violinist Michael Rabin. I know that because a guy that owns a record store that Elton John walked into said that he went and actually searched for this violinist. Radiohead, the rock band, whenever they're recording an album, the first thing they do is they listen to Sketches of Spain by Miles Davis. It's so important to expose yourself to everything you can. Next, this really changed my perception on making art. It's something that I heard Peter O'Toole, the actor, talk about. And it's whenever you have a massive project coming up, or an idea you're executing, or something you're leading to, or a performance, before then, it can be months, it can be weeks, it can be days. You must make sure you commit yourself to unrelenting, unceasing, uninterrupted, in-depth study of what you are about to do and how you are going to do it. And you must know it as well as you know the back of your own hand. That is critical. Finally, a quote by the English scholar G.K. Chesterton. The reason angels can fly is because they take themselves lightly. Don't take yourself too seriously. Don't be a jerk. Don't be hard to work with. And always remember the feeling that you got the first time you picked up your instrument. And always remember that you want to inspire that in someone who's picking up their instrument for the first time because of you.
Those are some really great points. Navreet, can we hear from you?
Yeah, for sure. Since I'll be a little bit mindful of the time here, and I know that's almost time to wrap up. Um, so my story is a little bit different in the sense that I'm not a professional musician. I am someone who wanted to be a professional musician and sort of chose my own walk of life to integrate music into what I wanted to do in terms of my professional career. I guess my one piece of advice to creatives and other entrepreneurs alike, if you will, is don't be afraid to do something on your own. If you have an idea, if you want to plan a showcase, or if you have an idea, don't be afraid to just go with it. At the end of the day, you're not disappointing anyone by creating something new or introducing something new into the scene. Like I said, there's a lack of opportunities for artists everywhere, not just in Vancouver. So don't be afraid to start something on your own and just go with it. I feel like that starving artist stereotype, I'm quite honest, I'm sick of it. And I don't want to hear anything more about starving artists going on from now, because there is money in the arts. There is opportunity in what we're doing, but sometimes that just means you have to create your own opportunities if they're not out there. And I feel like this goes with everyone, especially with Natalie, Keely, and Jack, and everyone here, is that we've identified the weak points and the pain points within the creative and the arts industry. But here we are trying to defy against everything that we're being told in school, that the arts is something you can't make money in. But here we are going against the grain of that and finding ways where the arts fit into our lives and where we can see financial opportunity from it and make a name for ourselves in this industry. I'm good.
Yeah, that was all really good. my point kind of has to touch on what Navreet said there, is that, you just kind of have to go for it if you want to go into the music industry. I'm somebody that, originally wanted to go to school for music or, at least minor in it. And the fear kind of ended up stopping me. And I went into something I felt is a little bit more stable in that way, like political science. It's potentially easier to find a career in this. But the reality is, as I kind of was just going about life, I was really, really missing the music part of my life. And so I kind of just went for it. And I made a song on a garage band alone. I don't really play any instruments well. I just sing and I figured it out how to do it on my own. And, I released it. It didn't blow up, but I got some streams, I got some interviews from it. And it was something that really kind of reignited my love for music and my love for creating. And now it's something that I want to pursue again and pursue professionally, potentially. And so while I'm still in school for political science, for other aspects of life, I am pursuing this because I really love it. And I love turning the things that I feel into music. And I think that if you have that passion, then you should just go for it, try it. It doesn't have to be the only thing that you do, but it can be something that you pursue because you love it, not necessarily to get famous from it. And I think that that's something that I am really passionate about just because I love creating, not necessarily to make money off of it, but because I love to create. I think that's it for the questions that we've planned. And Natalia, was there any questions that we got asked?
Let me double check. The last time I checked, there wasn't any, but let's check again. No, unfortunately, there are not any questions. But that's, I just want to say it was a huge honor to be a fly on the wall and listen to you guys. I'm super proud to hear that the next generation is going in with such a logical way. I don't think I ever was didn't have your wisdom when I was your age. I'm going to be completely honest. I was all over the place. So thank you for sharing your thoughts and your fears and your vision for Canadian music and for Canada in itself as well. So thank you guys. It was a great honor to hear you all speak.
It was an honor to speak with everybody here. It was great to hear from you all.
Yes, this has been a wonderful event, and I know we're all very grateful to you for coordinating it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Natalia.
Thanks so much.
I think it was an awesome experience to be able to talk with people who have the same passion as I do. So it was really great.
I second that, and I think it's been too good a blend to not do it again sometime.
Yeah, I think what Jack said about the community associated with our scene is so true, and it's so important that we maintain those awesome connections and we continue to lift people up rather than trying to one-up everybody within our scene.
Yes.
Bring people down in that matter, and I feel like that's something that's constantly happening, especially within the older demographic in the music scene. Is they're constantly trying to bring the younger generation down for having such an optimistic view on the music scene and trying to create more opportunities. And here we are just sort of trying to fight against that narrative and trying to establish ourselves within the scene because it is possible. And once again, I wanted to say thank you for everyone just here sharing your walks of life and your perspectives and how you've managed to integrate music into your day-to-day life, your professional life, or whatever it be. And thank you for Natalia for organizing this and having me and Keely be.
And before we leave, Before we leave, I actually want to respond to something that just before we finish the questionnaire, Jessana said. Jessana, you commented on how you went into political science. You felt very drawn to that area, and you wondered if maybe it would give you more career opportunity than music. And then once you got in there, you realized, oh man, I'm really missing music, and this is such a giant part of me. I have heard that story so many times that I think it would be silly not to address it. And the thing I have to say is, I think it's really inspiring that you were able to identify that and you were able to figure out why you wanted to go into other areas and you chose something that still motivates you. It's not like you're doing it something that you hate, and that you were also able to have the insight to figure out this is what's missing. Um, But there is one thing that I have a problem with that happens often in the musical community. It's when somebody does something like that, it's, oh, I'm not a musician. I just do this as a hobby. It's a passion. It's something I need in my life. You got to remember that you are still a musician. And if you released one track and it got streams and it got you freaking interviews, that's remarkable. You got to build on that wave because you should be really proud of that.
Thank you. It is something definitely that I want to, you know, continue doing and build off of.
No reason
So
you
thanks.
can.
Awesome. Thank you again for hosting this, Natalia. And, you know, it's just been so great to speak with you all and meet all of you. So awesome. Thank you.
Well, have a wonderful rest of the evening. And then at 7 o'clock, come back on our Facebook Live because we will be listening to the stylings of Taylor Jade. And I love listening to her voice. It's intoxicating. That's the only way I can put it. So have a great evening, guys.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Have a good night. Bye.
Honor.